Okay, so hello everyone. So I'm just carrying on responding to some of your comments. So now we get on to your comments about the diagnosis process. And when I was talking about the video and I asked about how long your assessment took for for your conditions. So one of you says that your ADHD assessment was done privately and that it lasted over 2 hours. You say, like you, but less than your example, your autism diagnosis was much more in-depth. It took place over a few days, several hours each time, and your mum was interviewed for a number of hours too. This year, you actually saw someone online say that they got an autism diagnosis after just 30 minutes. Oh my god. Yeah, I heard someone get an ADHD diagnosis after only 30 minutes, which is quite shocking, but I mean, an autism diagnosis after only 30 minutes? Like, how can you diagnose autism in 30 minutes? I wouldn't trust a diagnosis after only 30 minutes. That's crazy. That's like not much better than a self-diagnosis, really. Another one of you says that you're based in USA, so things might be a bit different over there. In 2006, you had a neuropsych evaluation that took 4 2-hour appointments. You also had an IQ test, you were tested for mental illness, ADHD and autism. So that's interesting. So yours was very comprehensive then and covered lots of different conditions all in one assessment. That's quite different to how they do things in the UK. Over here, you get diagnosed for each condition separately. I would like to see things going forward where people are assessed for all of the neurodevelopmental conditions in one assessment. Now obviously that would mean the assessment takes a lot longer, and yeah, would it be because you'd have to be assessed for each condition, it would take a lot longer. Like when I say each condition, I mean things like ADHD, dyspraxia, maybe specific learning difficulties and all those things that tend to co-occur with autism. Like a full neurodevelopmental workup really. But currently in the UK, that's not how it's done. And so consequently, people very often don't just have autism. Like, it's incredibly common for people to also have ADHD and other things going on, and then they have to go on a waiting list again to get assessed for ADHD, when it would be a lot simpler if it could all be done at once. Now obviously before 2013 that wasn't possible anyway, because before 2013 you could not be diagnosed autistic and ADHD together. It was one or the other. Whatever was causing a more difficulties, you get diagnosed with that, and you weren't able to get diagnosed with both. It wasn't possible. After 2013, it became possible to get diagnosed with ADHD as well as autism, or dyspraxia as well as autism, or whatever. So obviously that means that now lots of people are coming forward to get assessed for ADHD as well. But I think, yeah, having one neurodevelopmental assessment covering all the conditions would make sense. Unfortunately, with specific learning difficulties, if you didn't receive that diagnosis as a child or in education, there's no way you can get diagnosed with that on the NHS, so people do have to get privately if they want to find out what those conditions, things like dyslexia, dyscalculia and things like that. And I think the same applies for dyspraxia. You can get an assessment for dyspraxia on the NHS, but it's very, very difficult to get. You have to really provide evidence that you need the assessment. It's really, really difficult to get it. Most people don't. So the only other alternative is to go private, or just to not bother, basically. I personally suspect I'll have some form of it, but because I've got my autism diagnosis and ADHD diagnoses, I don't really see the need to, because I'd have to go private because they don't do it on the NHS and it's a lot of money. And I mean, most people who are autistic will find that they do have some dyspraxic traits anyway. It kind of goes with the territory. Certainly when I was at school, it actually mentioned on my report that I had, it literally said motor skill impairments, and it listed some dyspraxic issues, which basically are kind of dyspraxic issues like severe spatial difficulties and other issues in my development, such as problems with jigsaw puzzles. Hey, I don't have that autistic stereotype. I don't meet that autistic stereotype, but things like that. But I don't know, because I can't say 100%. It might just be part of my autism, or I might just simply have traits, But ultimately, it doesn't matter, because I've got my autism diagnosis. Like I say, it tends to come with the territory anyway. But yeah, to have a full neurodevelopmental workout would make sense actually, because autism doesn't usually occur on its own. It nearly always occurs with other neurodevelopmental conditions, just part of the territory. Anyway, carrying on now. So next comment now, one of you mentioned brings up planning, and you say, sometimes someone plans a task poorly because they don't know what to do, or the task is too difficult, or it may occur when someone feels that what they're doing is boring. So planning issues may occur when someone feels what they're doing is boring. So it's not necessarily connected, say, to something like ADHD. You mentioned there can be other reasons for a planning issue. You know, is it simply that the person doesn't understand the task? Is it beneath their cognitive ability, in which case inevitably they're going to face planning problems? But someone with a clinical planning issue will struggle to plan even when the task interests them and is within their capabilities. And they might struggle to plan. Part of this could be caused by impulsivity and over-enthusiasm, might just like dive in without doing any planning. I never plan tasks. I hate planning, so I just tend not to. Like, for example, when I was at university, you know, when you're taught to like plan essays, I never bothered. I just dived straight in, because like the whole planning thing, I just couldn't do it. It's just too much effort, and I just couldn't do it. For better or worse, I just dive straight in, you know. The key is that the person finds it difficult to plan even if they really try and have the knowledge and skills to deal with a core task. So another one of you says organisation skills, your organisation skills, another one of you says don't improve even on things you're interested in. Yeah, I'll say generally speaking, that's true for me as well. Yeah, I mean, my organisation is pretty crap, full stop, really. Another one of you says, mentions Claire in the programme, for one who got diagnosed with ADHD, for one who didn't get diagnosed with ADHD. She didn't get diagnosed with ADHD, which is quite unusual. You say, how will Claire get official support when even people who are diagnosed often don't get support? Or are they talking about her getting support from friends and family? Yeah, I suspect you're talking about friends and family primarily, or body doubling support that you can get online, you know, from online groups that anyone can attend. My guess is that's what they're referring to. So again, a few of the comments now on the subtypes video I did, and also some subtypes. One of you says that you fit into the first group in the study as well. That's the social and communication challenges group, if I remember. But that you have bipolar, and your bipolar is worse than your OCD. Another one of you says, could you look into and talk about autism subthreshold? Yes, indeed, I can do. Can you look and talk about autism subthreshold? By that, I presume you're meaning people who maybe have a broader phenotype, who maybe don't necessarily have clinical autism because they maybe aren't that impaired, and stuff like that. Yeah, that would be. I'll see if I can do that at some point. One of you says that it's clear that you had some odd development in utero, but there was also autism in your family, and you were born premature. And you also had some conditions. You have some conditions possibly related to hormones in womb. So that's interesting. It's also interesting that you and me, from what I've seen as well, we both have very similar difficulties, or you know, in the fact we're both housebound and that we both have contamination OCD, and for reasons for our fears is very similar, and we both seem to have very similar challenges, obviously not exactly the same, because otherwise we'd be clones and we're different people and have different, you know, certain things obviously that are different between us. That'd be weird if we're exactly the same, wouldn't it? But we clearly obviously seem to have a lot in common in terms of how conditions affect us. And I wasn't born prematurely, I was born on time, but I did stop growing in a womb. And so yeah, there were in utero problems, and I was born like below birth weight, like lower than what I should have been, basically, which clearly obviously did something to the brain development. So it's interesting that we both had like issues, into utero issues, and have similar problems. So it does make me think that maybe they need to do more research scientifically into this, and look at and explore how interuterine issues can what the interaction is between interuterine issues and neurodevelopment. I think would be very interesting for them to explore. And what comes first? Autism, does that make these things more likely, or does the interuterine issues worsen the autism? Would the autism already have been there? It's just that this worsens the autism. What comes first ultimately? That would be an interesting line of research. One of my videos on OCD, one of you suggests contacting OCD UK or OCD Action. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll have a look into that. Another one of you says that if someone needs help, they still need help, whether or not someone else is worse off. And this is on my relative privation video I did. One of you says that back when your grandmother was alive, she developed cataracts and she could still see, but her vision was getting worse. How immoral would it have been if doctors said, no, we aren't going to treat you because people more severe than you, because there are people who are more severe than you who are blind. Indeed. And you mentioned how that's no different than, saying someone can't have treatment because there are those who are more severe than them. Okay, so thank you for watching. By the way, I would at some point like to do a video. Now this might bore some of you because it's not related to autism or my usual topics. It's just because it's something that I'm quite interested in at the moment, and I would quite like to do a video on it. Something I got quite interested in recently is invasive plants. And I've been finding myself doing a lot of research on dangerous plants, specifically hogweed and poison hemlock. Don't ask why, but I've been finding myself looking at a lot of YouTube videos on these and constantly looking at YouTube videos on them. I just like watching it. It's kind of creepy. So specifically those two I'm most interested in. But I was wondering about doing a video on like UK invasive plants. There's also things such as Japanese knotweed and a few others. Himalayan balsam, I think is one of them. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. Obviously, I reckon some of you won't be interested in that, and that's absolutely cool. You don't need to watch it, obviously. But it's just something that I'd quite like to do. Okay, so thank you for watching.